Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let me first welcome Colonel Roberts. It's my privilege to introduce to you today, for the first time in this format, Colonel Bryan Roberts. That's Bryan with a B-R-Y-A-N, who's the commander of 2nd Brigade, 1st Calvary Division. Colonel Roberts, this is Brian Whitman with a Y at the Pentagon. Can you hear us okay?
I certainly can. Thank you very much, Brian.
His brigade arrived in Iraq in November of 2006 and operates as part of multinational division Baghdad. He's briefing us today from Forward Operating Base Prosperity in Baghdad. And as I indicated, this is our first opportunity to have you in this format, and we welcome you and look forward to a brief operational update in terms of what your brigade is doing, and then appreciate the opportunity to ask you a few questions from the Pentagon Press Corps here. So with that, let me turn it over to you.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedules to attend today's press conference. As Brian mentioned, I'm Colonel Bryan Roberts, commander of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 1st Calvary Division, currently conducting counterinsurgency operations in central Baghdad, or the Kark Security District. I would like to use this opportunity to tell you who we are and what we are doing here in central Baghdad. I especially want to highlight our major operation in the Kark Security District, which we call the Haifa Street Project. But let me start with a little background for perspective. In October 2006, the Blackjack Brigade deployed with approximately 4,000 soldiers from Fort Hood, Texas to Kuwait. In November, we assumed responsibility for South Central Baghdad, or the Rashid District. One of our major accomplishments in South Central Baghdad was the reopening of the Dura Market Complex, which, as many of you know, continues to thrive today. We moved from South Central Baghdad to Central Baghdad, or the Kark Security District, in January of 2007, shortly before the announcement of the Baghdad Security Plan. Kark is comprised of 9 neighborhoods and makes up the center of Baghdad. It is home to approximately 250,000 Iraqis, both Sunni and Shia, and is mostly urban with city streets, single-family dwellings, and high-rise apartment buildings. Prior to the war, Kark was known as one of the most prestigious places to live in Iraq, as it is close to the seat of government, national landmarks such as the Baghdad Zoo, the Iraq Museum, ministry buildings, and luxurious palaces. By the end of 2006, however, things had badly deteriorated in Kark, and most notably on Haifa Street, its well-known thoroughfare. Every day, insurgents attacked coalition forces and innocent civilians. In January, there were 87 attacks on coalition forces and 53 murder victims of sectarian violence. Kark had become a support base for terrorists and groups ranging from Al-Qaeda in Iraq to criminal gangs that were able to operate freely. Haifa Street was largely abandoned. Its few residents couldn't go out on the streets due to the threats of snipers and roving bands of criminals. The residents that did stay in the area only came out at night to scavenge for food and water. Our brigade, partnered with the 5-2 Iraqi National Police Brigade, began to operate in Kark in January. After several initial clearing and combat operations, we saw almost an immediate effect on the number of attacks on both civilians and security forces. As we execute the Baghdad Security Plan with patrols, checkpoints, and establishment of coalition outposts and joint security stations, we have continued to watch as levels of attacks have decreased. During the month of May, there were 35 attacks in Kark, a drop of 60% from January. Even more impressive is the decrease in sectarian murders, 4 in the month of May, down 94% from January's 53. With improved security and a drop in violence, we have been able to focus on another of our primary missions, working with local leaders to improve essential services and economic opportunities in central Baghdad. We have been doing this primarily through the Haifa Street Project because we believe that the revitalization of Kark must begin with its icon, Haifa Street. The goal of the Haifa Street project is to make Haifa Street a safer, cleaner, and better place to live. A joint venture between the Neighborhood Advisory Councils, Kark District Advisory Council, Baladiya, Amanat, and security forces, the Haifa Street project will be a visible sign of progress that all Iraqis can be proud of and other districts can emulate. It is a three-part project consisting of, first of all, projects that demonstrate visible signs of change and a return to normalcy. There are approximately 20 of these projects. Second is the improvement of essential service networks. And third, the continued coalition and Iraqi security force partnership. We have several projects that demonstrate visible signs of change and a return to normalcy that are currently underway. Removing old posters and graffitis from building walls, repairing curbs and traffic circles, installing solar street lights, and cleaning up parks and playgrounds, to name a few. Additionally, we have removed over 160 abandoned vehicles, making Haifa Street safer and a better place for traffic flow in a busy city. More cleanup and repair will follow in the months to come. Working with the city management and public works of Kark, we have also made great strides in projects to improve essential services. These projects focus on improving sewer, water, electricity, trash removal, schools, and medical facilities. So far, we have 77 projects ongoing, valued at over $19 million. The contractors hire most of their workers from the local area, and as a result, there are over 2,500 Kark citizens recently employed. All Iraqi citizens deserve a healthy, sanitary, and safe environment. We are dedicated to making this happen in Kark. In fact, this week we completed the cleaning of all the main and neighborhood sewer lines serving Kark. Now the system is serving over 250,000 people again. This was not the most glamorous projects, but it's one of the most important ones to a functioning city because it is crucial to sanitation and the prevention of disease. In addition, we have contractors working on the Karama water treatment plant, which will ensure all of our residents have clean drinking water. Part 3, joint security operations continue to happen every day. Kark is patrolled day and night by both coalition and Iraqi security forces, and checkpoints and joint security stations have been established where Iraqis and Americans are working side by side. We have a great partnership with our Iraqi security force brethren who are making a major contribution to the Baghdad security plan every day. We're nearly at the end of a 30-day combined clearing and reconnaissance operation of the apartments along Haifa Street to search for illegal weapons and criminals, assess the infrastructure and essential services, determine demographics, and to identify owners, renters, and squatters, and of course, determine their needs. This detailed clearing and reconnaissance will provide more accurate demographics of the population and give us a better idea of how we can assist the residents of Haifa Street. The apartments are about 50% occupied and need work. They will, in the very near future, provide a place for thousands of people to live. We're on the right track here in Kark, and the continued downward trend in violence is a good indicator of things to come. I think it's very important that the American people understand that central Baghdad, as with many other areas in Iraq, is getting better every day. Kark is once again a bustling district. Cars, horses, and donkey-drawn carts, people and markets fill the streets. There is still occasional violence, and we know the enemy is always plotting against us and innocent civilians, but we will maintain a stable and secure environment with the Iraqi security forces and improve essential services, economics, and governance with the local leaders of Kark. This concludes my comments, and I will be happy to answer a few questions.
Well, thank you for that overview, and we'll get started here. And I think we'll let Carl go first today.
Colonel, I'm Carl Osgood. I write for Executive Intelligence Review. I'm curious to know to what degree that the progress that you're describing in Kark is actually dependent in the long term on how progress, and the conditions in the rest of the country. Given that from the casualty reports we've been seeing over the last couple of months, is progress in the rest of the country is clearly uneven. So I'm just wondering is this progress you're reporting fragile, or do you think it's enduring?
Carl, I think it's very enduring. CARC is isolated as the center of Baghdad. There is violence going on around CARC right now that has not affected our success at all. In fact, it is certainly a model for the other security districts to emulate, and I think that this success that we're achieving right now will be long-term. It's depending largely on the Iraqi security forces who have stepped up to the plate and are performing quite nicely. So I don't think it will affect it at all. Thank you.
Sir, this is Pam Hess with UPI. How many joint security stations and combat outposts do you have? And projecting that into the future to maintain the security level that you have, how many do you think need to be kept? And would you tell us what you think the difference is in CARC from other security districts in Baghdad? Why is your work going well there, and what can they learn from you?
Currently, we have 2 JSSs and 2 combat outposts. And I think that is about the right number. As time goes on, we may determine that we can eliminate one of the COPs or one of the JSSs, or we may determine that we need to add COPs or JSSs. But right now, we have exactly what we think we need to provide a stable and secure environment for the people of CARC. And the JSSs obviously assist with command and control and give the people a place to come to and to report to if they have situations they want to bring to our attention. As far as the second part of your question is concerned, I think the reason we have been successful in CARC is due in large part to the command of General Baha, who is the commander of the 5-2 Iraqi National Police Brigade. He has the right mixture of checkpoints and entry control points established in and around CARC. He is patrolling 24 hours a day with both the Iraqi Army, the National Police, the Iraqi Police, and all the other security forces that are under his command. He has actively involved in the security process. That coupled with the Blackjack Brigade, and I think we have a tremendous recipe for success.
Colonel, this is Andrew Gray from Reuters. Can you say how many Iraqi police you have working alongside you? What's the number? And what happens when you go, whenever that is? Will they be able to take this job on themselves, or will they need additional support from US or other coalition forces?
I don't know the exact number of Iraqi police that we have. We have 2 Iraqi police stations operating in the CARC Security District. I think that the Iraqi police are certainly capable of stepping up and assuming control of security in CARC in the long run. But right now, I think that it's taken the right combination of Iraqi police, national police, Iraqi army, and coalition forces to maintain the security situation that we have right now. I think it's a little early for provincial control.
So I was just wondering if you could, I'm sorry, this is Jim Garama from American Forces Press Service. I was just wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about the state of training for the Iraqi army, the police, and the local police specifically in your area, and how that helps or hinders your mission there.
Well, all of those forces have their own training that is run by the big, the high level of command, I guess is the best way to put it. We only do local training based on our assessment of their need. And that's done through the partnership with the battalions that the Iraqi coalition force battalions, the Iraqi security force battalions are partnered with, as well as the transition teams. An example is that the national police are brought out of sector, they go to Numania, and they go through the re-bluing process. and then they come back and are reintroduced into a security district.
Yes. Sir, it's Jennifer Griffin from Fox News. You were talking about General Baja and how he's doing such a good job in your area and that makes a difference for why you're doing so well. Are you suggesting that in the other neighborhoods, in the other areas, that there are other Iraqi generals who are not doing so well? And is that the reason for the rise in sectarian killings? Because we're seeing a rise in sectarian killings in other neighborhoods. Can you give your assessment of what's happening in those other areas and how perhaps the Iraqi forces are not doing so well there?
No, I certainly wasn't insinuating that at all. What I was literally doing was explaining that I think the success that we're achieving in Kark is due in large part to the command of General Baja, who is doing a very good job. I don't have a good assessment or feel at all for how my counterparts, partnership units, commanders are. I would assume that they are as good, or if not better, than General Baja. They may have other challenges that they have to contend with that I don't. But certainly the Iraqi security forces and their leadership have risen to the occasion.
Follow-up, sir, is the Iraqi Finance Ministry in your district, and do you have any details on the 5 British citizens who were kidnapped last week? Any details on how the search, excuse me, for them is going?
Well, first of all, you know, of course, I send my condolences to the families of those 5 individuals, and I know that the search continues. I do not have any feel at all for the progress. I just ask God to make sure that their families are taken care of and to protect and watch over those individuals who are still missing.
Is ministry in your area of control?
No, it's not. It is not in the Kark Security District.
Colonel, it's Louis Martinez with ABC News. How would you categorize the state of control in your area in Kark? Would you call it as being in the retain mode, or in the control mode, or in the clearing mode?
We have actually not done the wholesale clearing in Kark that you may be familiar with from the other security districts and interviews or visits that you've conducted. We have done some clearing. As I mentioned, we cleared all of the apartments along Haifa Street. Very successful operation, and fortunately, we had no resistance at all. We've done some intelligence-driven clearing operations, and we will continue to do that. I'm not sure that we need to clear every mahalla in Kark. It just may not be necessary. So in some areas, we're in the control. Others, we're in retain. And then still yet, there are some areas that we need to clear based on the intelligence that we're receiving.
It's Pam Hess again. Would you give us some demographic information on Kark? What the ethnic makeup is, how many people live there, the length of Haifa Street, what sort of physical area you're talking about, and certainly this hasn't come without a cost to you. What have been the American and the Iraqi security force casualties since you began in January?
There are 250,000 residents in Kark. It is about 50-50 Sunni Shia from what I was last told. I've heard that there are perhaps 60% Sunni, 40% Shia, but the most accurate information that we've been able to ascertain is 50-50. It's about 3 miles long and a mile and a half or so wide. It runs along the Tigris to the west, to the east, and to the west we have the Mansour Security District.
Your casualties?
2004. We have lost 28 soldiers from the Blackjack Brigade. None of them, however, have been in the Kark Security District. I have 2 battalions that are detached to other units. They have lost soldiers, and under my previous task organization, we lost some soldiers, but we have not lost any while conducting operations in Kark, and very few Iraqi security force soldiers have given their lives in Kark as well. I would say no more than 5.
Huh. Would you consider Kark then more permissive than other environments, or is it just a credit to your troopers?
Well, I would say that first off, I owe a debt of gratitude to our soldiers for the great job that they're doing, as well as the Iraqi security forces and our partnership. It is permissive, but due in large part to what we're doing there. The operation that was conducted back in January, Warhorse Strike 5, certainly ridded the area of foreign fighters that were operating freely here over the last couple of years. The introduction itself of the Baghdad security plan made some of the terrorist insurgents, militiamen, go to ground, others just totally leave. And then the execution of the Baghdad security plan with numerous detentions has certainly put an end to the large amount of violence that Kark has known in the past.
One more. Have you seen the forced moving of either the Sunnis or the Shiites that we've seen in other of the districts?
No, I certainly haven't. That has happened in the past, but I haven't seen any of that since we have focused solely on the Kark Security District since January. In fact, what I have seen is a total reverse. We are seeing both Sunni and Shia come back home to the Kark Security District, and we're seeing a fading of the sectarian fault line. So we hope that that trend continues. We think that bringing people back to the Haifa Street apartments will certainly be a telltale sign of whether that is successful. But we're optimistic, and we think it's going to be a good road ahead.
Sir, Gordon Lubold from the Christian Science Monitor. You mentioned here, the decrease in attacks, including IEDs. What would you attribute specifically to the reasons for reduction of IED attacks in the district?
Well, we have seen a few IEDs in the southern portion of our sector, in the Codicea area, the area that marries up with Route Jackson and Route Irish, excuse me. But those are minimal. We have not seen any at all in the center of Kark. I attribute this again to the checkpoints that we have established and the fact that we have essentially broken the will of the enemy's back.
Colonel, it's Al Pessin from Voice of America. We've seen reports the last couple of days from your colleagues in other neighborhoods saying that they're not in control of as much area as they had expected to be at this point in the security plan. And it seems that they're saying largely the reason is that the Iraqi forces are not retaining the territory, and they've had to go back and re-clear and reclaim some of these areas. So again, I would ask, what's different about the Iraqi forces in your area? How's their manning strength? How's their operational capability? And why does the picture you're painting in Kark seem to differ, not completely, but fairly substantially from what we're hearing from other parts of the city?
Well, I think that we have the exact right mixture of Iraqi security forces and coalition forces as it relates to the size of the security district, the demographics, and the level of violence that might otherwise exist if we weren't here. And that's really what I attribute to the success right now is we got it just about right with regards to those things that I mentioned. I really can't comment on how it compares to other security districts. Those guys, my comrades, my wingmen, they have a tough fight, and they're getting after it, and they're making a difference every day.
It's Pam again. again, is there some metric that you have for manpower per square mile with Iraqis and Americans? Is there some, because you mentioned several times this mix, I'm wondering if there's a magic number.
There is a quote-unquote magic number that is in the counterinsurgency doctrine. We are not necessarily in align with that magic number, but when you take out the international zone, areas that don't need the numbers that the doctrine says, those areas that are built up horizontally versus vertically, I think it's a wash. And I really think that we have the right number of troops for the terrain that we're asked to be responsible for.
Can I get the figures? Colonel, it's Al Pessin again. I had asked about the percentages of Iraqi forces who are actually in place compared to those who are supposed to be there, the manning levels.
We are about 85% strength across the board with our Iraqi security forces. That's all of the Iraqi security forces we have in our sector. A little bit shorter than that with regards to the non-commissioned officers and officers. But at each level, the subordinate leader is stepping up to fill the void. And again, we have this partnership that is working very well for us. And where they need assistance and professional development and skill and task training, we're doing that. And they're getting right back out in the street and performing the duties very, very well.
Mike.
Colonel, it's Mike Mount with CNN. You had mentioned earlier that the Kark district is a model of kind of the success that you're having. And with some of the other questions about, or what you were commenting about the right mixture, are other commanders in Baghdad, coming to you and asking questions or getting suggestions of what they can do better, or Iraqi commanders doing the same thing? Are you advising them at all on your success in that area?
Well, Mike, we all share tactics, techniques, and procedures. We have a monthly Baghdad Commanders Conference, which includes both coalition forces and Iraqi security forces. We learn from each other. I have used techniques from all of the Brigade Combat Teams in our area. So, I'm sure that they are looking at the success of the Kark Security District as I looked at some of their successes in order to establish what we have now in Kark. But by and large, the areas are totally different, and they have a different problem set. And so, they're working on their problem set, and where they can learn from me, I'm sure they are, and vice versa.
Get a ballpark on that. Go ahead. Thank you. It's Pam again. Can you give us a ballpark on the number of Iraqi security forces that are in Kark? I take it you've got about 3,000 Americans there?
Pam, I'm going to have to get back with you on the answer to that question. It's a tough one. I would say on average it's about 1,800. But again, I can find that number for you offline. It's a brigade that consists of 3 battalions.
One more. How about you, Jennifer?
Okay. Sir, can you just paint, Haifa Street was really bad in early January or just before that. Who was causing most of the trouble there? Was it all foreign fighters, or were there other factors? How would you paint just how bad it was and how it turned around and how quickly it turned around?
Well, there were a number of different actors, and I think they all worked together or against each other, but had the same effect on the population. There were militia, terrorists, insurgents, gangs that sort of fed off each other. It was a tit-for-tat type relationship. Again, as I described in January on the 8th, we did Warhorse Strike 5. It was very, very successful. at detaining a large number of individuals that were responsible for, we think, leading the acts of violence against the populace. And then the introduction of the Baghdad Security Plan, the execution of the Baghdad Security Plan on 14 February has just yielded the good situation that we happen to have right now. I mean, we often scratch our heads and say how this happened, ask ourselves how it happened, but you know, a certain degree of it may just be luck. But luck is obviously when opportunity meets preparation, and I think we have risen to the occasion.
Well, Colonel Roberts, we have reached the end of our allocated time here, and it is getting late in your day, and I'm sure it's been a full day for you. But before we bring it to an end, let me just turn it back to you in case you have any final comments that you'd like to make.
I certainly wanted to thank the Pentagon Press Corps for taking time out of your busy schedules again. I know that there's a lot of news for you to cover. I know you just did an Afghanistan press conference, so you're feverishly working the file. But you all listening to what we have to say over here from Baghdad and Iraq makes a big difference, because we want the American populace, all those who support us, to know that things are going better over here than they often hear. And there are success stories every day, both from coalition forces and Iraqi security forces. I'd like to publicly thank our soldiers, because they're doing a great job. Every day they give 100%, and they're making life better for the citizens of the Kark Security District. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the people back at Fort Hood for all the support they give our families and soldiers. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the next time.
Pleasure's been ours. We wish you continued success, and hope to hear from you again real soon.
As they say in Iraq, inshallah. Thank you.